And welcome back to another episode on this HDTV Test YouTube channel. It's great to see you here, joining me on whatever it is we're trying to do within the confines of this box. This is not VAR, by the way. I'm your host, Vincent Teo, and I'm a TV reviewer and professional calibrator. Today, we're taking a quick look at the Panasonic FZ952, also known as the FZ950 in Europe and Australasia, which is the flagship OLED TV from the Japanese brand for the year 2018. This is the 65-inch version, model number TX-65FZ952B, which is the UK set with review play, but it also comes in a smaller 55-inch screen size. What differentiates the FZ952 from the more affordable FZ802 or FZ800 are two things. One, there's a Technics-tuned soundbar on the FZ952, similar to the one found on last year's flagship EZ1000 or EZ1002. Panasonic calls it Dynamic Blade Speaker. This delivers superior sound quality to the inbuilt speakers on the FZ802. Two, the Panasonic FZ952 comes with a more premium remote control with brushed metallic silver finish, which can be backlit with one click of the button in the dark. A smart remote is also provided, but like the game show, it's pointless. Before we move on to talk about picture quality, I'd like to take a moment to thank UK electrical retailer Crompton & More for sponsoring this video. They sometimes loan me TVs to review, and they also know their TV products very well and so can give you unbiased, independent advice for your purchase. If you're interested in buying a new TV, even if it's not this Panasonic FZ952, please support this channel by supporting our sponsor. Call Crompton & More on 01302 365 760 and ask for Richard, and he will take care of you with great price and service. Thanks again for your support. After running our comprehensive array of tests and measurements on the FZ952, I can tell you that the picture quality is identical to that delivered by the step-down FZ802. Any difference is going to be caused by panel-to-panel variation. So, rather than go through the same things I went through in my review of the Panasonic FZ802, I will give an in-depth summary of the strengths and weaknesses of Panasonic's 2018 OLED televisions, including this 65-inch FZ952. Strength number one is undoubtedly its color accuracy, both out of the box and also after calibration, in both SDR and in HDR. As you can see from this color checker SG chart, where we measure 140 different color patches, which is more demanding than the 6-point or 24-point color checker charts that many other technical publications measure, you can see yourself that none of the 140 measured color patches exhibited inaccuracy that exceeded delta error 3, the commonly accepted humanly perceptible threshold for moving video content. In fact, the average delta error across 140 different measurements on our FZ952 review unit was only 0.67, the lowest we've ever recorded on a consumer OLED to date. Now, this is in SDR. Let me show you the HDR color checker SG chart, which I rarely measure because it's usually all over the place. Look at this. This is a stunning level of color accuracy, with no errors above 3 if you exclude white, which has a higher error because it takes into account luminance, and we know that current OLED TVs still cannot reach 1000 nits on a 10% window after calibration. Until LG and Portrait Displays fix their 3D LUT AutoCal problems, the Panasonic 2018 OLEDs deliver the most realistic and natural colors for all types of content on a consumer television. Strength number two is HDR10 static metadata tone mapping. As I've explained numerous times before, tone mapping is needed to display 1000 nit or even 4000 nit HDR content on the television with lower peak brightness. Our 65-inch FZ952 reached a peak brightness of 700 nits on a 10% window after calibrating to D65 white point. As you can see from these PQ-UTF tracking charts, the Panasonic FZ952 modifies its tone curve appropriately depending on the static metadata, striking an excellent balance between maintaining overall brightness and preserving specular highlight detail without introducing excessive polarization or color striping. Sony's tone mapping algorithm used to clip a lot of highlight detail, but now, after they've adjusted the algorithm, it can look a bit dark. Samsung's is generally too bright unless they want to fix the overbright EOTF issue with a firmware update. And there's also more polarization unless you use digital clean view, which can reduce fine detail and film grain. LG's dynamic tone mapping is good but inconsistent. Sometimes it's too bright, sometimes it's too dark, and gradation isn't as smooth as the Panasonic. Among the big four TV brands in the UK, LG, Samsung, Sony and Panasonic, I like Panasonic's HDR10 static metadata tone mapping the most. Strength number 3 is low input lag for gaming. Panasonic has lowered lag time even further to 22 milliseconds in both SDR and HDR modes, and the bonus is that you can get extremely accurate colors too when playing games, because you can enable game mode directly inside any picture preset, let's say ISF Night or True Cinema, which has been professionally calibrated. Now that we've covered the key strengths of the Panasonic FZ952, let's talk about some weaknesses. There's definitely some black crush going on, even in the most accurate picture mode out of the box. Maybe Panasonic thinks it's better to sacrifice some shadow detail than to expose the near black noise and polarization that is typical of consumer OLED television. A skilled calibrator like myself can reduce the black crush using a combination of the TV's brightness setting and also the newly implemented 2.5 IRE and 5 IRE gamma controls. But out of the box, Sony's A1 or AF8 OLEDs are better at correctly showing shadow detail without excessive fizziness, thanks to Sony's superior near-black gradation. Another weak point on Panasonic OLEDs is the occasional motion stutter with certain frame rates and intelligent frame creation or IFC setting, an issue which has been present since the introduction of the HDX processor, an issue which has proven very difficult for Panasonic to nail down and eradicate completely. After the latest firmware update of 3.052 on our FZ952 review unit, the stutter is very rare. It's very subtle. In fact, many owners may not even spot it, but it is actually still there and will be most obvious during slow movements in a cloudy or foggy scene. For example, this one from Planet Earth 2. But the biggest factor that may put off prospective buyers from purchasing a Panasonic OLED is definitely the lack of Dolby Vision. Some quarters may argue that vanilla HDR10 is good enough and you don't need Dolby Vision. Okay, let's take one step back and think for a minute. HDR10 is static metadata where there's one set of metadata for the entire movie, while Dolby Vision is dynamic metadata where more information can be fed to the TV on a scene-by-scene or even frame-by-frame basis to accurately portray the creator's intent. If dynamic metadata is not better than static metadata, then why is Panasonic and Samsung pursuing HDR10+, the open standard dynamic metadata format? Now, if you can start accepting that dynamic metadata is better than static metadata, then the choice is between HDR10+ and Dolby Vision. And at the time I filmed this video in July 2018, I know this month I have been a bit slack because of the World Cup going on. Dolby Vision is by far more widely available to the general public. It's on Netflix, it's on Apple TV 4K box, it's on 4K Blu-rays. I cannot find a single piece of HDR10+ content available to consumers where I can say, right, this is definitely 100% HDR10+. And if you compare side by side against HDR10, you can see the improvements here, here, and here. Even on Amazon Prime Video, where all HDR programs are supposed to be delivered in HDR10+ format on compatible televisions, there is currently no logo, no sign, no notification to say that you, the viewer, are actually getting HDR10+, which brings us back to Dolby Vision, which is the most widely available dynamic metadata format. Now, I've heard some technical reviewers and even professional calibrators claiming that there's little to no difference between Dolby Vision and HDR10. Well, how many of them have compared two TVs at the same time using two Oppo 203 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray players, or have broadband connection fast enough to support two separate Netflix UHD streams? how many of them are stupid or mad enough to buy 2 copies of the same movie, even if it's Power Rangers? Here, I'm going to use One Amazing Day as an example. It's the first documentary that's available in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, I believe. A producer at the BBC has been kind enough to send me 2 copies of the 4K Blu-ray for this comparison, so thanks a lot, Steven. The screen on your left is the Panasonic FZ952 displaying it in HDR10, and the screen on your right is an LG C8 displaying it in Dolby Vision. Some of you will complain that this comparison is not valid. It's not even using the same TV, but that's the reality facing Panasonic OLED owners. That's what you're going to get when you watch this disc. HDR10 static metadata, even if the FZ952 has the best HDR10 tone mapping on the market. And in this snakes versus iguana sequence, the Dolby Vision presentation, to my eyes, just have more depth and pop, retaining the color fidelity on the pebbles, whereas the HDR10 presentation looks more washed out, with the colors on the pebbles turning white. Maybe you can adjust the EOTF and color management controls on the Panasonic to match the Dolby Vision presentation, but the match will only hold true for this specific scene and not in another darker or brighter scene. And that's the beauty of dynamic metadata technology. The video source contains information that allows a compatible television to use the correct tone curve for any particular scene within the display's capabilities. And we haven't even started talking about ICT-CP color space yet. Is the difference between Dolby Vision and HDR10 night and day? Well, it depends on where you're coming from. An AV enthusiast like me is always chasing the nth degree of perfection, wanting the best viewing experience. I'm just a grumpy old perfectionist. I believe dynamic metadata is better than static metadata, and at this moment in time, I can easily find more Dolby Vision content than HDR10 Plus content, and that's all there is to it. Right, I don't know how I managed to turn a review of this Panasonic FZ952 into a Dolby Vision versus HDR10 comparison, but if you are deciding between the FZ952 and the cheaper FZ802, know that the picture quality is the same, and if you buy the FZ952, you're paying more for the Technics-tuned soundbar and premium remote control. On account of class-leading color accuracy, the Panasonic TX-65FZ952B earns our highly recommended award. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.